Welcome into the DNVR Rockies Podcast, brought to you by Strava Craft Coffee. Strava CBD coffee is infused with CBD and CBG and is going to have you feeling as great as I've been as of late. It's not going to give you those coffee jitters if you want 3 or 4 cups a day, and can help even with chronic headaches, joint pains, and so much more. Now, when you go to StravaCraftCoffee.com, you can get 25% off your first purchase when you use promo code DNVR25. I am your host, Patrick Lyons, and joining me today is a very good friend of mine that I haven't had on the show in quite some time. Glad to welcome back from Mile High Sports. You know him on Twitter, @Media by AP. It's Aniello Piro. What's up, buddy?
How we doing, man? Did you make it? Was the dust storm going through up north? I woke up this morning. It was crazy, the weather outside, dude. How are things good with you?
It's always howling in northern Colorado. It's rough. There was a little sprinkling of snow on the ground, and then 2 minutes later, it pretty much had melted into water. But it's good. We need the hydration. And one thing that you and I both need, and now looking at the screen right now for anyone watching live, if not, if you've downloaded the podcast on Thursday morning, make sure you go back and like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, DNVR Sports. But the one thing we both need is a haircut. Now, you've got a hat on today, so you're hiding all of that lettuce. And I got to know, first question off the bat, I'm hitting hard, Aniello. You got to know this. Your friend.
That's fine.
But I got to hit you with the hard questions. When are you planning on getting a haircut?
You know, I honestly go back and forth because I honestly really want to grow my hair out. And I was letting it flow not as long as you, but like my brother's hair is probably close to as long as yours. And I'm like, okay, like it looks pretty good on him. But then I kind of come back and I'm like, if I want to be able to, maybe have a career in TV or do something where I've got to be on camera, like I don't want to look, with like the long hair, ragged kind of style. So I always go back and forth. Like I let it grow out and then I shave it, or not shave it, but I trim it down, a little business casual look. I'll probably give a fresh cut for the new year. Like I'll probably ride this wave through the new year. Sometime early January, I'll probably, a little freshen up. But I will say I'm inclined to keep it longer as it gets colder. Like I hate when you get the haircut, in the wintertime, it's buzzed and then you're just freezing. And I get cold easily being from California, the worst type of person I know. But it's just, I don't know. I think I'll probably give it a couple more weeks, man. We got a couple guys here at the studio. One of them's trying to, he started with a buzz. He's trying to grow it all the way down to here now. So see how that plays out for him too.
It's possible. This is the third time I've had my hair this long. And the first 2 times, cut it off after it grew to be over 10 inches so I could donate it to Locks of Love. So I'll be doing that again this time. But it's an endeavor that could take a good 3.5 years. And so I'm about 2 years in now on this one, pretty much the entirety of the pandemic. So we'll see how long it gets. There's diminishing returns now at this point because now it's just crazy long. And another year's worth of growth is just going to look pretty minimal at this point.
If they made a sequel to Dazed and Confused, you have the perfect aesthetic for that. Like you've got the whole vibe. Like I could see you pulling up convertible 70s, doing what you got to do back in the day. I love a little band shirt, maybe an Aerosmith shirt on. You've got the good aesthetic going. I love the mustache too, dude. That thing is strong.
Yeah, man.
I love it.
Squint my eyes a little bit more and I try to be as laid back as I can be. And
love it, dude.
You're on every day, 3 to 4, 98.1 on Mile High Sports Radio, covering all the sports, letting people know who to bet on. Could you have possibly made the right bet this year when it came to the Colorado Rockies? Because I think, how they fared in 2021 was a bit of a surprise, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm remembering correctly, 63.5, I believe, was their win total. And I slammed the over on that. My producer, Andrew, here at the station, he's as big of honestly, probably a bigger baseball fan than I am. And, that is such low-hanging fruit for a team that's going to play 100. I mean, there's 162 games in the season. You're telling me they can't win 64 of them? And just knowing division, just knowing that, you don't have to sweep all the time, right? You're looking to get 1, 2 of 3 every now and again. I mean, the ebbs and flow of the season is just so insane. And what's the old saying? Like, you're always going to win 60 games. You're going to lose 60 games. And it's what you do with the rest. That's going to kind of dictate your season. You're going to win and lose by, the virtue of the game. So, that was the one bet that I had to give myself some confidence too. I'm a natural optimist. Like I hate being pessimistic as, that's kind of the state of the vibe right now with the organization. But I was like, all right, 63.5, get some good energy, get some good vibes, root for some wins. Obviously nothing too crazy. And it's low-hanging fruit. They were like the lowest win total by far in baseball last year. So 2 thumbs up for that bet. Yeah, we did a good job on that.
Yeah, they started April, and you began to think, uh-oh, this might not be a great bet. But they normalized, right? Both at home, not winning quite as much, at least in the final month of the season, but all throughout the summer, they were dominant at Coors Field. And then on the road is really where they struggled. But it was all about that starting rotation, that the bats, again, the offense, and we'll get to what they need to do to improve that offense for the rest of this offseason. But the starting rotation was just good enough to ensure that they were able to, win 74 games this year.
Pitching matters, and that's the thing is we always know the Rockies are going to be able to hit. There's obviously some of the complexities that come with playing at Coors Field as well. And I mean, I've covered them, 5-6 seasons now, and that was some really solid, consistent starting pitching, whether it was from German Marquez, Antonio Senzatella, John Gray has really settled in over the last couple of seasons as well. And I think it makes you kind of realize like, hey, like you got Buddy Black, who's, a pretty good manager, obviously a pitcher himself, former pitcher. If you can kind of crack that code of learning how to manage the home and away splits from a pitching perspective, I mean, that's the key to consistent success, in my opinion. The hitting is going to be there. You're going to be able to figure that out. The league as a whole tends to struggle with hitting at times where pitching is starting to dominate. So if there's any sign for encouragement and optimism, it's the fact that the Rockies seem to be figuring out, a little path here of how to get some good, consistent starting pitching.
And they seem to think that this group that they have is going to be okay, going to take some steps forward next year. They've made some offseason moves where really they've just signed up a couple guys to extensions. Chassin was a free agent, brought him back. CJ Cron wasn't technically a free agent yet. They signed him right after the end of the regular season. And Senzatella and Diaz get extended past club control in the next year or two. So those guys all going to be back for 3 to 5 years. So it's $80.25 million that new GM Bill Schmidt has spent. That's the question of the day right now. Is that enough to move the needle and possibly get them into the postseason right now for there being only 5 teams in the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I just think the reality of the situation is the Rockies in postseason are, kind of you can't really put those two things in the same sentence from a realistic perspective. And I think there's some nice elements to the Rockies. And like we said, the pitching was nice. The hitting has been okay. And, they weren't nearly as bad as people thought they were going to be last year. And I think, they've got some building blocks, like they've got no one earth shattering right now. Right. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with Trevor Story. Obviously he's kind of their big marquee player. Charlie Blackmon's on the back nine and the pitching's the pitching, but they don't really have anyone that's going to blow you away, but they've got solid players that I think can amount to a pretty solid team that can be competitive. I mean, we're talking, right around that 75-ish mark, be competitive close to 500. And I think that's all dependent on the pitching. Right. But I think that they've spent, I don't want to say smart. I mean, I like the moves that they've made, but the Rockies are one of those organizations that will always spend within their means. They'll go get who they want to get as long as the stars will align, right? And I think there's nothing surprising about these moves. I think the moves that they have made are kind of par for the course. But I do think that they're moves that are going to keep this organization relatively stable. And I mean, hopefully you're able to kind of build off some momentum that you were able to establish last year. I mean, not the best season in the world, but, there's some pieces there, right? That I think, maybe you get some good pitching. Maybe you can start to draft and develop, the analytics get up, and maybe a couple years down the line, guys that are used to playing at Coors Field, maybe you got something here. But unfortunately, I just don't think you could talk about the Rockies in the postseason right now.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It may be hard to even do that should they continue to make some more off-season transactions. But as you said, they like to play within their means.
Right.
And the organization has come out and said, next off-season, they'll really start to get the payroll back up to where it was around 17, 18, 19. And so they should take a step forward this year. They did offer John Gray some money that he didn't accept as he went to the Texas Rangers. So that money you could say, hey, that's some free cash that you can go out and spend. Where would you like for them to spend what could be, upwards of $20 million? We don't know what the exact figure is going to be because they did spend this offseason. Not all of it was for the 2022 year. And so, they may want to spin that story of, hey, we spent $80 million. Granted, a majority of that is 2023 and beyond.
Right. Yeah, no, and it's a great question. And just looking at where they're at, like Trevor Story, like I know there was some, speculation that maybe they'd try to retain him or want to try to retain him. And that just makes no sense. And obviously with the lockout going on, that's obviously going to become increasingly difficult. And it's almost in a way, like, I'm not sure if, like, I would say pitching, like, starting pitching, relief pitching, some of the guys that are out there, but we all know that unfortunately by playing in Colorado, it seems like you've got to pay a premium to get these guys over here. Right. And it seems like the candidates that are likely to sign in Colorado are guys that are, on their second or third contract, right? The guy who's on his first big deal isn't going to look to come to a place where the odds are stacked against him, right? So I think I'm not trying to say that this coming season is going to be a wash, but like we said, they have some building blocks, and you need to focus on your drafting, your developing, your trading, build up that farm system, because you've got Zach Veen, you've got some exciting players that can maybe kind of catalyst you and, pull you here into the future. It's just, there's not a lot of moves that this team can make right now that will make them immediately better, that I think makes them a playoff caliber team. Like the Kris Bryant rumor, like what does that accomplish? Like, I understand that he's from Las Vegas, and Las Vegas and Denver aren't too far away from each other, but like, what does that do for the Rockies? Get a few extra butts in the seat for the first 3 months of the year? And yeah, maybe you've got a marquee name that you can market around, but from X's and O's and winning baseball perspective, it's a gimmick. You know what I'm saying? That would be a gimmick move in my opinion. So I would say refine the bullpen, keep adding into your bullpen, get some starting pitchers, especially now that you're going to lose Jon Gray, and really just try to prove to yourself that you can play at Coors Field, play at altitude, and then set yourself up for next offseason like you alluded to. And maybe, hey, you're a 75, 80-win team. Maybe people look at you on the cusp. Colorado's an attractive place to live. Maybe that's how you can get the big fish free agent.
Yeah, Kris Bryant, I think, is probably out of their price range. But if they go and spend some of that money that they're talking about spending and got two guys like a Kyle Schwarber and a Jorge Soler, you say, all right, well, those two guys in the middle of the lineup does make the Rockies a bit more attractive or a bit more appealing as a postseason club. But even still, they would have to go out and do it. Signing two big bats right in the middle of the lineup doesn't guarantee, okay, those are the final pieces that they need. Those are the pieces that they need to be a little bit more relevant, but it's still not necessarily enough with the X's and O's and the lineups to guarantee that, they're going to be a postseason contender. It increases the odds, but it just still might not move the needle enough in 2022.
And I mean, we all know, we talked about how the Rockies like to stay within their means and whatnot. And I mean, look at the national perspective of this team. I remember after the Bryant situation, I believe it's Mark Carrig of The Athletic, who's a very well-respected writer. Ken Rosenthal said the same thing, that the general vibe around this team is what the hell is going on? The national perspective on the Rockies is everyone is over here. The Rockies are here, living in their own little world. And I think to become relevant again, not be looked at as a laughingstock, not be looked at as a joke. I think that's something that you can take a look at here for the Rockies is, kind of a stepping stone here, because the way the Bryant situation played out, the way the Arenado contract played out, not getting anything for Jon Gray, the Trevor Story situation as well. These are things that don't reflect well in your organization from a public perception. So it's just going to be interesting, because I think they have to try to win over the baseball public of hey, we're not inept. We know what we're doing. We're going to spend money. We're going to spend it the right way. We want to try to build up a winner, because I think their reputation to a degree is not tarnished, but they're looked at as kind of what are you? What are you, the odd man out in a way. So I think that should also be an objective of this coming season.
Yeah, the reputation has taken a hit. And, at altitude, the Rockies do need to operate differently than other teams. That being said, there are things that they're not doing or they are doing that are within their control that, as you said, Aniello, are not really within the industry standards. You have Arenado, you've got Gray, you've got Story. With those three guys, if you wanted to rebuild and trade all three of them away, you could bring back a pretty penny. And hey, the haul for Arenado still remains to be seen. It's off to a good start with Gomber. And of course, we've seen Elihuris Montero light it up down in AA and AAA this past season. But between Gray and Story, to only get that compensation pick, it is, of course, a bit of a disappointment.
I don't get that. It just seems elementary. And I'm not trying to degrade the Rockies. There's a lot of smart people that work in that industry.
Yeah.
But to not trade Jon Gray, knowing that this was my analysis of the Jon Gray situation is I think the Rockies wanted to almost call his bluff and say, all right, we know you like Colorado. We know that your family's kind of settled here. Go find a better offer and see if you want to take it, right? And I think Jon Gray got that better offer from an organization in the Rangers who aren't the best team in the world, but it's just one of those things where it seemed like there was at one point, a pretty strong desire from Jon Gray to want to try to stay here, and I've covered Jon Gray. I know you've been around him, one of the nicest guys you could be around. I don't see Jon Gray refusing a deal if it's a fair shake in his opinion and to his agent's opinion. I don't know the details of how that all kind of played out, and now you're sitting here kind of with your hands empty. And you're talking about a guy that, look, maybe he didn't live up to the hype of being an ace, but turned into an excellent, consistent 2-3 starting pitcher for you, who could bring the heat. And now you're going to be without that, and you're not going to really get anything for it when there is a system in place designed for organizations to recoup some sort of assets for this. Like, that's just like I said, when it comes to re-earning your legitimacy in the eyes of the public, that's like, what are we doing here, guys?
Yeah, I think the Rockies were, I'm not going to say they were duped by John Gray, but I definitely think there's an element of them really wanting to believe. And, he made certain overtures to the organization about him wanting to stay and not being traded. And so I think they erred on the side of doing right by their guy rather than doing right by their entire organization and their entire fan base. And you thought, yeah, there was a window, there was a way that you could have gotten something done and locked him up for the future. But if you don't, the consequences, are going to be long lasting going forward. And so you have to balance that. You have to put on your big boy pants and say, all right, we've got to make more of a business decision. And frankly, we do need to trade you or pony up the money that's going to possibly be an overpay. But I'll tell you this, one thing that's not an overpay is your experience when you hang out at the DNVR bar on the corner of Colfax and York, especially if you're coming to hang out during happy hour from 3 to 6 p.m. with drink specials, appetizer discounts. If you're a member of the DNVR.com, now just 50 cents for your first month, you get access to all kinds of things, including a bigger beer when you're at the bar. We've got tailgates going on this Sunday against the Bengals at 10 a.m. Come down to the bar. You can take a shuttle over to 18th and Federal and get all you can eat sexy pizza and Breckenridge Brewery, all you can drink on the Breck Brew. You can't beat it with your membership to the DNVR.com. And as I said, Breckenridge Brewery, they're the official beer of DNVR, and they're the official seltzer, the hard seltzer of DNVR as well. It's good company, hard seltzer. The cool thing that I like that they've been doing is donating a part of their profits to the National Parks Conservation Association, which helps prevent forest fires. We did a little bit better this year than in the past, which is saying a lot since, it's been a little dry. Aniello, we just talked about the fact that, hey, we finally got some moisture. We got some condensation. That's good, but we can't always rely on that. So we need folks like the National Parks Conservation Association to help out with that, and people like Breckenridge Brewery to help with the donations as well. Manscaped, listen up, fellas. Got to talk to you about it. In this episode of DNVR Rockies is brought to you by our favorite producers of beard trimmers, quote unquote, beard trimmers. The global leaders in below-the-waist grooming are leaving 2021 with new products, right? Get clean and refreshed for the new year with their new ultra-premium body wash. Also, special offer alert, use the code DNVR for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. 4 million men already trust Manscaped. It's time for you to join them. So, Aniello, the John Gray deal's 4 years, $56 million. Does that seem like an overpay to you, or typically market for essentially a number 3 starter with possible number 2 upside and frustratingly number 4 downside when he's off his game?
I think it's market value, and I really don't think there's anything shocking about that deal, which I think from the Rockies' perspective, just objectively sitting here, like, this is a guy that figured out how to pitch at Coors Field. He got comfortable pitching at Coors Field. Like, that is, I value that a lot more than bringing somebody off the street for maybe a few $1 million less, right? Someone that's been there and done that, shown a consistent ability to do it. And, the Rangers are getting a pretty good pitcher. And I do think it depends on market for John Gray. I think Texas is a good spot for him. Like, I know the Mets were involved. I think the Yankees were also lingered. Like, he would crumble in that market. Like, knowing him the way that we do, I think you can agree with me. Like, one bad start, the fans start chirping, say a prayer for John Gray. Like seriously, and I love him, great guy, but like, that is not the market for him. He needed a place like a Colorado or like a Texas where, hey, baseball, people enjoy it, but it's not like a live and die type of situation. Obviously, the Rangers are kind of on the up and up with their massive offseason. They spent like a $500 million, something like that this offseason. Like, they're absolutely insane with the money they've been handing out. So I think it's a market. I think it's a fair market deal. And I think the Rockies are maybe going to regret it, to be honest, because like, you got to spend money. Like, I mean, like, that's the thing is that in a sport where there's no salary cap, like, there's nothing earth shattering about that deal. And knowing that you already have German Marquez locked up, knowing that you already have Antonio Senzatella, Gomber as well, like, that's your third or fourth horseman. Like we said, like, pitching, I think, in my opinion, is going to be the backbone of this team moving forward. Like, I don't get it. I just don't.
Yeah, it's a bit frustrating, of course, to say the least. And as you mentioned earlier with Kris Bryant, hey, he's only 11 hours from Las Vegas to Denver. 11 hours is a long time. Yeah, that's a long drive. It's a short flight, but the thing I think lost in the shuffle is John Gray, from where he's from in Chandler, Oklahoma, is like 3.5 hour drive from Arlington. So
Yeah,
that was kind of right there under our noses, the entire time. You talked about Jeff Bridich and how, things really fell apart under his leadership. In his place, the interim GM Bill Schmidt becomes the full-time GM. Is it too early to really put a grade on him? Were you happy with that decision, A, and then B, how do you like what Bill Schmidt has done so far for a first-time general manager?
Another par for the course move from the Rockies, and I do think it's kind of, a little early to judge him completely. I think he said some of the right things. I kind of like the tone that he's taken just from a neutral perspective as well. But we talked about the John Gray decision. Like, what are we doing there? This is a guy that's been involved with the organization for almost 2 decades, I believe, if not already 2 decades. So, like, it's not like this is a new, fresh start for him. Maybe it's a new role, but he's very familiar with how this organization works internally. I just think it's discouraging, like, not trying to, like I said, the jury's still out on him. I think it's discouraging to see the Rockies look themselves in the mirror and still not look externally from the organization, because this is, and I've said it on my show, I've told everyone that when I talk about the Rockies, like, the unfortunate reality of the situation for the Rocky fan is this is a team that plays to get lucky. This is a team that is not, at least in their history, in my opinion, has not tried to field consistent winners, year after year, right? They go on these little runs, 07 to 09, 17 to 18, right? You get those little 2-year bloops, but then it's like, oh, okay, then the bottom kind of falls out. And I think if you want to change your trajectory as a franchise, if you want to try to be consistently successful, if you want to try to win in that manner, then external had to be an option on the table. And it just seemed like the Rockies came to this decision rather quickly. And it really just felt like after they, put Bill Schmidt in this role after getting rid of Jeff Bridich, it's like, if I could have bet on it, will Bill Schmidt be the long-term general manager for this team? I would have said 100% yes, just knowing their history. And here's the other thing that I'll say about the Rockies front office and their whole situation as a whole as it regards to Bill Schmidt. The Rockies are a strong general manager away from being consistently good, because it's not like they don't spend money. Like, there was a minute there where they were spending good money. They just didn't spend it in the right way, and there was no ability for them to double dip, right? Recoup. It's like, okay, we tried. Now let's pull back the curtain and wait a few years, right? You have an owner in Dick Monfort who's willing to open up the playbook a little bit. If you have the right guy to plug in and play those pieces, I think you have something here, because it's not about Monfort's inability to spend. It's just spending it the right way. And like I said, the jury's still out. If you can get the big player, if you can get the pitchers, let's see what he can do. But from an optics perspective, it's about as uninspiring of a hire as you could possibly have for the Rockies.
Yeah, optically speaking, everything, that fell apart with Jeff Bridich, you think, oh, this guy was a complete failure during his time in Colorado. But touching on your point about, hey, they're one GM away for doing something big, I think to a degree they were able to do something big with Jeff Bridich at the start of his tenure. Obviously, he totally missed the ball with the free agent signings, nearly $200 million wasted away on 5 relievers. Don't forget Chad Qualls and Jason Mott. We know about Ian Desmond's deal, right?
Dunn.
So that was a big piece, but he got Dick to spend a little bit more money, and I think the needle was moved a little bit. It's just to show that, hey, there's some capabilities here, and with the right person in charge, the Rockies could have something. And if they really had played their cards a little bit better, that window, instead of just being 17 and 18, and we did see it in 19 as well, up through about the All-Star break, that they were contenders, but really they could have had it so much longer if they had managed the Arenado situation. And so, that is definitely something hopeful, is that they're one GM away, the right GM away from having something. And it's still too soon, you're right, to really gauge what Bill Schmidt has done so far. Some good, some bad, nothing amazing, but nothing awful. And we'll kind of wait to see if he's the one that has the magic bullet, so to speak. Although you're right, an external candidate, I think, was the way to go, because that's what was discussed at the beginning of this when Bridich ended up stepping away was, yeah, you're right. We do need something from the outside to mix it up. It's kind of like, in baseball, you have a player's manager, and then you have a, sort of a front office, hard ass, if you would, and you kind of got to go back and forth to mix and match. And, they went internally in back-to-back general managers here.
Yeah, and it's like, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I mean, we've literally never seen an external candidate try to lead this team, try to steer this ship. And like, that's the thing is, it's I keep using the term par for the course, but like, this is just Dick Monfort's MO. And we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but the other reason why they're able to do this is because there's a zillion butts in the seats, right? I mean, they are one of the best drawing teams in all of Major League Baseball. They're a regional team, so they have a zillion fans in Wyoming, a zillion fans in the Dakotas, people in Utah, people in Nebraska. And I mean, this is also my bitter Met fan coming out at me because I've seen, what public how that
we'll get to that.
Yeah, it's frustrating because the Rockies are a first-rate organization in everything but playing baseball. They've got a great stadium, fantastic location, great fans. Everything is, reasonably priced, cool logo, only team that wears purple as a primary color. Like, there's a lot to like about the Colorado Rockies. It's like, let's just put these pieces together and give this city a winner. And like, that's just where my frustration stems from. Like, looking at this team as a whole is like, you've got everything you want to be a superpower potentially in baseball and have some good pull and be a really good franchise. It just hasn't come together yet.
It is coming together for Ball Aerospace and Technology because right now they are hiring on the front lines of their aluminum can production process. They're also practicing diversity and inclusion for years. They're looking for external candidates. Yes, they are looking for external candidates. They allow you to be free of your authentic self, no matter who you are, no matter what your background is, whether you're from New Jersey like me or from California like Aniello. It doesn't matter. It's not going to prevent you from being successful there. And right now they're looking for people who have technical mechanical skills to help them manufacture aluminum cans and bottles, which they've been doing for a long time. That's why they're an iconic brand. So text Golden to 77222 to get linked to open positions. You can also go directly to jobs.ball.com and search for Golden. That's jobs.ball.com and search for Golden, or simply text Golden to 77222. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, has an offer every football fan should jump on. New customers can bet just $1 on either NFL team to score, and when they do, you win $100 in free bets. It's that easy and rewarding. DraftKings customers can also get skin in the game with new same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. The more legs you add, the more money you can win. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable, and best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code DNVR, and new customers can bet just $1 on either NFL team to score, and if they do, you win $100 in free bets. That's promo code DNVR this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only, new customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. Now, the first step to good health is taking care of your mouth. It's true. It's really true. And the folks at Green Mountain Dental Group have been pivotal in keeping those of us at DNVR in great shape. Same is true for our DNVR listeners who've switched to Green Mountain Dental Group over the years to make them their permanent family dentist. Schedule a cleaning, x-ray, and exam, and you're going to receive a free Sonicare toothbrush from Green Mountain Dental Group, located only 15 minutes from downtown Denver. Well, Aniello, you're again, as a big baseball guy, we'll get to the Mets stuff in a bit, in a minute, but I know you might not want to. I'm sorry. I'm going to put you on the spot.
No, you're good. No, it's just, hey man, it's a sickness rooting for that team. It really is.
Hall of Fame, Todd Hilton. You got to see him play, and you've been in this town for quite some time, and this is the time of year where you look at those numbers and you reflect, and we understand the whole Coors Field conversation, and people on the coasts may not quite as much. What's your stance on Todd Hilton's basically his potential for getting into the Hall of Fame here?
I do think he has a good chance, and I think I don't have it in front of me, but I believe his percentages have increased slightly over the years. I know it's kind of trending in the right direction, and we've seen players that I hate the Hall of Fame process sometimes. Like we saw Tim Raines for like a decade just being held hostage until he finally got in his last year of eligibility. And unfortunately, I think Todd Hilton might be a similar type of candidate in this sense. Like, you can't dispute the numbers. And I hate the fact that you have to use Coors Field against him. Like, obviously, he signed here in free agency, extensions, the whole nine. And it's like, you can't hold that against him, in my opinion. And I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. And I think what he meant to the team from a leadership perspective as well. And I think I am looking at this a little bit more from a Rockies perspective too, of like, it's 1A, 1B with Larry Walker and Todd Hilton, but I still think Larry Walker was before my time. But like when I think of Mr. Rocky, I'm still thinking of Todd Hilton. Like, like that's just the person who comes to mind for me of like someone who represented the organization thoroughly. You still have the image of him raising his glove, after they clinched the NLCS there to go to the World Series in 07. Like, he's got the beard, the facial hair, he just he fits the whole persona of the organization. And he put up a lot of great numbers, a very versatile player and did some for a sustainable amount of time. It's not like it was a 3 or 4 year flash in the pan. This is a guy who did it for, a pretty extended period of time here and did it well. And, for a long time was the one consistent aspect of the Rockies, whether they were good or bad, right? Losing Holiday, getting Cargo. Todd Hilton was still the kind of guy to, bridge the gap and keep this team somewhat stable. So, obviously, I'm a little bit biased. I'm a little bit of a homer, and knowing that Larry Walker is the only person in from the organization, I think that there's nobody else, at least right now, that you can make a stronger case for than Todd Hilton. Maybe when Matt Holliday's day comes up, but he accomplished what he accomplished in St. Louis, so you're not sure how that's going to go. So, I got my fingers crossed for Todd Hilton, man. I think he's a deserving candidate, absolutely, and I think he'd represent the franchise extremely well.
If you saw Todd Hilton play, if you know your baseball history, and that there are metrics out there that can factor in what
right.
Coors Field does as a benefit. If you look at all of those things, Todd Hilton is a Hall of Famer. He might 100%. Not be a 98th percentile Hall of Famer, first ballot guy, but he's going to be one nonetheless. Now, last year in voting, he got just under 45%. And with Gil Hodges getting in recently with one of the Golden Era committees, that now meant every player who had ever gotten 50% or higher on a BBWAA ballot was in the Hall of Fame. Right. Now, granted, that doesn't mean if Hilton goes above 50% this year, he'll get in by the end of his 10 years. It just means at some point he'll get in. And I think, once some of these steroid guys start to move away, either getting in or just falling off the ballot, I think that's going to help change the conversation a little bit. And that's where I also wanted to jump off and get your thoughts on the two guys that are at the pinnacle of this in their 10th year of Bonds and Clemens. What are your thoughts on those two guys? Should they be in? Should they be banned? It's a very charged question because it also opens the doors to that next generation of the David Ortiz and Alex Rodriguez. But if we're just talking Bonds and Clemens, what's been your take on those guys?
It's tough, dude. And my opinion has flip-flopped a little bit over the years. I don't like the fact that they did what they did, but it's not like they were the only ones. So it's like, why are we going to hold it against, to a degree, that's kind of my school of thought of okay, yeah, they were juicing, but, so were a lot of people. And obviously it's an enhancer. And they were just, and they were good players before. And that's the unfortunate part is Barry Bonds was a Hall of Fame player before. It is mind-boggling me. Roger Clemens pitched against the 86 Mets and then the 2000 Mets in the World Series. And probably, maybe some of the steroids, help in some longevity and recovery time and the whole nine. And in their case, they seem like Hall of Fame caliber players before they're back. A-Rod's a little different. Obviously a complete natural talent, but we saw, the ups and the downs and his apex. It's kind of hard to tell. David Ortiz, the same thing, right? We saw him kind of fizzle out in Minnesota. How did he just get back on track in Boston? I love Big Papi, one of my favorite players of all time. But I think because you're right, it sets a precedent, and if you let them in, then A-Rod and Ortiz and all these guys are going to be knocking on the door saying, okay, they're in, I'm in, right? I mean, the numbers are indisputable. Gosh.
I'll say this, there's a line of demarcation and it becomes hard because it's a domino effect. You go, if you let the first group in, the second group's going to come.
Right.
Even if you draw a line in the sand, because you go, yeah, but there's also those similarities. There's an overlap. And so for me, there's a line of demarcation for when the league banned the use of PEDs. And,
that's fair.
And testing didn't make its way into the majors until 2004. And of course, the penalties aren't what they are today. And so if you look at everything that happened before 2004, even including the Mitchell report, which was supposed to be this anonymous test that went and that information wasn't supposed to go out. Yeah, we know what we know now. Just like Clemens and Bonds never tested positive for steroids or performance-enhancing drugs, but we know that they were using those things. So I think if you draw the line there, it still becomes blurry. But at least that kind of helps the conversation move along to say these guys should be in. It's a bit nefarious, but you know what? I think we understand the bigger picture of what was going on at baseball at the time. And
Yep.
these weren't just some rogue people. It's like the Astros. If they were rogue, they would have been banned, right? I don't think they would have absolved the entire organization and shut down operations in Houston, but there would have been a lot more suspensions. But it was because they weren't operating on their own. They were at the head of the iceberg, right? There was a lot more going on around the league.
And I think like we said, like you look at those players, and I don't think that their success, or at least all of it, was a product of their use. Like you look at Sammy Sosa, you look at Mark McGwire, and it's like, okay, like, I think you got to chalk up a fair amount of their success to the juice they were taking, right? And I think that's the difference here. It sets a and look at A-Rod too. Like I remember there was a report that came out a few years ago, like he was going in between innings, like half innings, he would go like chew on something that would help give him a boost for his next at bat. Like that is insane. Like that is a different level, at least from my interpretation of what these two guys did. I lean towards putting them in. And if that means you've got to put an asterisk on it, or maybe they're not allowed to wear a certain team's hat, or they're put like, like maybe there's some sort of, maybe they're not allowed to attend their own ceremonies. Like, maybe it's more of I think you have to acknowledge the game's greats. And in history, just in life, like not everything's going to be spotless. And like you said, like it was this new thing that baseball didn't put a real clamp on until right around 2004. And because it's unfortunate because if you put them in, then like you said, it opens up the case for these other guys as well. And so be it. But I do think there has to be some sort of acknowledgement of like, yes, we're putting them in, but yes, this was also kind of a strange period for the game where this was happening. I do think there has to be some sort of acknowledgement. I don't think it's fair to everybody else to just group them together. I really don't.
3 guys that are on the ballot that are on the cusp. They're certainly in the Hall of Very Good. They may make it to the Hall of Fame that I want to point. I've got 4 guys. I'll save the 4th one for last. But Scott Rowland, Andrew Jones, Jeff Kent, rapid fire. What's your take on those guys? They're in the conversation.
Right.
But do they get in? Should they be in? Are they in Aniello's Hall of Fame?
It's a good question. And like I have a soft spot for all those guys you just listed, like the players that I grew up watching, like Jeff Kent I know he made his bones with the Giants, but I remember him on the Dodgers with LaDuca and Sean Green and Adrian Beltre. Like those were the teams that I grew up watching.
He was with the Mets too. Don't forget.
No, I won't remember. I won't forget that. But I just like when you say those names, I don't think all-time greatness. I think really good players. I think solid players that had really good runs, consistency, the whole nine. But like, I do think that there has to be some, like to me, when I think Hall of Fame, I think awe-inspiring. And I'm like, all of those guys, like, and yeah, I was a little young when they were still playing as well. But like, where are the jaw-dropping moments across the board? Like, I don't know. Like that's kind of where I look at it. And it's like when I think of Hall of Fame, I want the heavy hitters. Like, and I'm not trying to say you cut out the fringe guys, but like, is Jeff Kent a Hall of Fame caliber player? Probably. Can you make these cases? Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned we see their percentages as well, but there's the lack of I don't want to say the lack of, but like there's not that awe that kind of comes with it. I think you kind of acknowledge it, but you're not like it seems like a little bit more shallow. I feel like where's the storybook style of play with these guys? That's where I look at it. But again, I'm an optimist. I like putting people in, but I do think that there's got to be a line drawn of like, okay, like you are unique in and of its own right, right?
We know our upper echelon. We know the all-time greats. Where when you hear the name, everything shuts down, and you go, well, I got about 10 minutes I need to talk to you about that guy. You might not necessarily do that with Andrew Jones and Rowland and Kent. 4th guy on the list that I think you're in favor of putting him in, and this is another guy that gets overlooked. I mean, his role in and of itself gets overlooked. Billy Wagner.
A legend, an absolute legend. I watched him when he was with the Phillies, and then I remember when I was a kid, my dad was like, we signed Billy Wagner, and that was a whole 9. And that's the thing is I think the art of closing is a little bit different as well. And obviously you've got the Hoffmans of the world, obviously Mariano Rivera, the greatest of all time. And I think you look at Billy Wagner and what he was able to accomplish and just the increase in pressure. It's almost like being a kicker in the NFL. It's like sometimes maybe you overlook it, but it's like, yeah, it's only 3 outs or maybe 6 outs on a rare occasion that you've got to get. But like that can erase 8 innings worth of work. It can erase everything that's been going on in the game. And I think that there's some high pressure in that one. But again, though, like that's the other thing is I think Billy Wagner had some really good moments, did it for a minute of time. But like when you've got the other guys who have kind of set that bar of Mo and Hoffman and some of these other guys, like you're always kind of looking down on guys like Wagner because of that, because of how dominant some of these other guys were. I think his numbers are there, though. I'm curious to see how his percentages shake out. That is someone, because of his specialty, that I would absolutely want to see, really get some heavy consideration to be put in.
Yeah, Wagner's in his 7th year right now. Did get a couple percentage points higher than Todd Hilton, so he's also trending in the right direction and looking good. All right, before we let you go, talking about your New York Mets, how do you like their offseason so far? 3 big position players, and of course Max Scherzer coming to Queens. You're grimacing, you're grunting.
They're just I'm so excited. Like, I know it doesn't seem that way, but it's like they've never done anything in my life outside of that run to 15 and like 06.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere in 15.
That was like actually the year I started sports media. But like, that was a quick story. Like, my first ever thing in sports media is I started a blog on my phone about the Mets. And I wrote an article, like 5 reasons why the 2015 New York Mets will have a successful season. And lo and behold, they ended up going on this World Series run. But like, so like, that was like my first little introduction, was just like blogging about the Mets. And it's just like, I'm used to the heartbreak. Like, that's the thing, is like, I look at Max Scherzer, and as excited as I am, like, I really am thrilled. Like, he is the one pitcher that like has really been a thorn in my side that I wish I could root for, because I love watching him play. But I'm like, you're going to pay this guy $40 million at the age of 37. Like, this is as much as I'm a believer in his ability to keep it consistent, I'm like, him not working out would be the most Mets thing of all time. You pair that with the uncertainty of Jacob deGrom's injury right now as well, and I'm like, on paper, this team is electric. Like, and I still also worry about the offense. I like it. I'm just cautiously optimistic. I'm not going to build myself up just to be crushed in the end, because it could be a possibility. I will say this, though. I'll feel a lot better once we get Buck Showalter as our skipper. That's the guy I want.
That was going to be my next one.
Let's go.
Who you wanted. So you want Buck. He's ready for
old school,
the bright lights. It's not his first go round.
That's what I want.
He's a little old school. Yeah.
And it's just like, he built the Yankees teams up back in the 90s only to get kicked to the side for Joe Torre. He was integral in that. Did a decent job in Baltimore. And I just think, like, talking about John Gray, how he wouldn't succeed in New York. Like, Buck Showalter has that persona, that charisma. And I just – look, I know that there's questions about his analytics. How is that going to bode with him being a little bit more traditional? Like, and I put a heavy emphasis in analytics myself. But, like, sometimes, like, there's a reason I love Terry Collins. Like, I like a guy that can connect with the clubhouse. And, like, that's the thing that I feel like lacked in Luis Rojas. And that's one thing the Rockies even have in Buddy Black, is someone who can marry the two together, personable with his players. Like, I think you get some of that in Buck Showalter, where you get some cachet, right? It's not and let me say this too. I do not want Carlos Beltran. I do not. So I don't think he's one of the finalists for the managerial position. I do not want Beltran. I want someone with experience. I know the Tampa Bay bench coach was also rumored. I think the Dodgers first base coach as well. I'd be okay if they hire them, but let's push our chips all in. Let's get Buck Showalter a ring as well. He's a baseball lifer. I love the prospect of bringing in Buck Showalter, and it seems like it's a job that he wants.
And they haven't had a vet in a while. The last 2 with Luis Rojas and Carlos Beltran for about 3 weeks, and Mickey Callaway even before him.
Oh God!
And so they're bringing in some of these veteran people, and the GM Billy Epler. There's some questions if he'll even be around very long. Like, this is just a 1-year type situation before they get their guy. Maybe Theo Epstein is the one that ends up coming in. Fingers crossed. I can see there. So. Yeah, things are working out. So really, Stephen A. Cohen, is he right now, and again, it's still early, much like with Bill Schmidt, is he just a less effective George Steinbrenner at this point?
Yeah, I honestly think it's a fair way to put it. Like, honestly, I'm very confident in his ability to right the ship. I mean, from a pure money perspective, I mean, he's got more money than he knows what to do with, and he's a Met fan, so he's going to figure it out eventually. I will say this, like, I like a lot about him. I don't like when he like just randomly tweets about stuff. Like, I'm just like, come on, man. I'm like, let's just put our head down, let's go to work, let's do it the right way. Like, I feel like sometimes there's like a smartest guy in the room vibe, which is obviously going to come with the territory when you're a gazillionaire and you just bought the New York Mets for $3 billion or whatever it was. But it's like, it's the same thing with I'm unfortunately a Cowboy fan, right? And like America's team, the whole nine, like all these teams, I'm like, shut up, prove everybody wrong. Don't talk about it. Put your head down, make the signings. And I think the Scherzer signing is a big step in that direction of like, hey, we can get the big fish. We're gonna dip into some scary numbers. Hey, Dodgers, you want to start paying $40 million a year to keep your guy? We'll do it as well. And I think that's gonna put some pressure on some of these big market teams. So he's the guy. And also anything was better than the Wilpons if we're just calling a spade a spade. So I think he's the guy. Let's get out of this honeymoon phase. And I think it is coming out of it. It's like, yes, if you win, you're going to be this celebrity, but you're not there yet. Like, let's get this team where they need to be.
The Scherzer deal, very pivotal, as you
Huge.
said. Just got to hold your breath and hope that he's as worth it as he was in the Nationals. Probably the best free agent contract ever signed. He was worth every penny. Last piece, give me a date. When does the lockout end?
Oh God.
And I hope it ends in 2022. We're just going to go ahead and assume that.
And that's the thing is, like, that's a tough assumption. Like, it just seems like this players union, and Manfred is so uninspiring too. Like that memo he put out, like it's smart talk. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, where is the personality? Where is the compassion? Right? Like that. It just, like, he's a lawyer. Like, you know, like, I mean, it's complete lawyer jargon, and it's fine. I'm not optimistic for this, man. And it's so sad because, like, the Mets signed Scherzer. You know, the Rockies hopefully are going to be trending in the right direction, but it seems like the players union is pissed from how the last CBA deal went down, and they are not going to budge. And that's scary to me because it seems like Manfred is the kind of guy with his education, his experience. He's the kind of guy that is not going to budge either. I mean, the reason they were able to get that smoke show of a deal the first time around is because Manfred knows what he's doing in negotiations and labor unions and the whole nine. Like, that is his specialty. So I'm not overly optimistic, but I do think when money starts to get tight and we get like just like the 60-game season, right? There was like, oh, for 100 games, 80 games. And then you finally got down to it and we're like, we got to get a plan together. 60 games it is. I think you'll see something hopefully come to fruition February, like late February, maybe. I know the winter meetings are over and done with. That's not happening. But I just think both sides are going to stare as long as they can before they have to blink. That's kind of my thought process. And it really wouldn't be surprising if they didn't play. Like, I hate that thought. It wouldn't surprise me at all, but I think that you're going to see this goalpost get moved as far down the line as possible until one side is forced to blink. I don't know what the players union is essentially looking to accomplish, but you got to figure this thing out because baseball players are able to make a gazillion dollars. And I know it's more so the top percentages of that. You've got to figure out the middle. But you got to figure this thing out because this is a sport that is already losing relevancy in the eyes of the general public, I think. And not having your product out there on the field is only going to cripple you even more. I mean, look at the NHL. We've seen hockey, I think, rise in popularity, right, at least in my personal life with their ESPN deal. I think more people are watching hockey than ever. And, you know, for a long time it was, right, football, basketball, baseball, hockey. I think in the general sense, like, baseball's got to figure this thing out, man. They got they got an identity crisis on their hand, that's for sure.
Yeah, they can't keep kicking the can down the road. They've got to get something done. Aniello, we got to let you go here. Next time we'll have you on. We'll talk a little bit about baseball cards, NFTs. I know you're getting into that world, man. So that's exciting. Go ahead and plug anything you want. I'll let people know that on Twitter, you're at Media by AP, and from 3 to 4 p.m. on 98.1 Mile High Sports Radio. Anything else they should be looking out for you today?
That's the main stuff. I just trying to cover sports from a local perspective using a little bit of a betting twist on the show. So, yeah, as you said, 3 to 4 every afternoon. And then I write a full NFL betting primer as well. So if you go to milehighsports.com every Friday evening, so Saturday, Sunday, I basically write about every single football game from a betting perspective. I have a podcast that goes along with it as well. So my big thing is, like, I'm a big fan of sports betting. It's legal now. I know there's probably plenty of people out there that are kind of like, hey, it's legal, but I don't know how to do it. Like, I want to bring sports betting to the common sports fan. Digestible, simple. We're not going crazy. Let's have a good time with it. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on in my world, man.
I can remember talking with you about this exact topic back when we were allowed in the clubhouses in 2019.
Right. Way back when.
I definitely got to bump that. That's fantastic, Aniello. Thanks so much again for joining us. Follow us over at DNVR Rockies on Twitter. I'm at Patrick D. Lyons on Twitter. And again, thednvr.com. It's only 50 cents for your first month, or an annual subscription gets you a free shirt at DNVR Locker. So for DNVR Sports, he's Aniello Piro. I'm Patrick Lyons. Thanks for tuning in to the DNVR Rockies Podcast.